Hi guys, this is Neisha from Ivanhoe Cycles. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Giant Lust 2. So with your Lust 2, basically now we're looking at a dual suspension mountain bike, which basically means we have the front suspension as well as suspension on the rear. Now with your rear suspension, the biggest advantage of this is it keeps your back tyre on the ground when you go over more of your bumps and that kind of thing, right? So this is where we get into our full-on mountain bikes. So with this one here, we've got 100mm travel on the front, which is equivalent to the men's Anthem. So basically they're designed as kind of a cross-country bike as opposed to anything downhill, just because they have less travel. So with your downhill bike, you obviously need more travel because you generally do more drop-offs and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit more full-on on the front and it keeps you a little bit more vertical. So these ones here are designed just for that kind of pure cross-country kind of riding. Now, obviously dual suspension, rear suspension keeps your back tyre on the ground, gives you more traction. So when you do those rock gardens and that kind of stuff, you really get your back wheel staying on the ground, which gives you more control over the bike and actually makes it a better ride because you've got a lot more control and it's a lot easier to do. Now, with this one here, we're back to running, we run Derailleur on the rear, Derailleur on the front, and SRAM X5. Now SRAM is basically, SRAM and Shimano are two of your main competitors in the bike component industry. So this one here, it's a mid-range kind of component. So nothing spectacular, but it still runs really well, changes quite nicely and does the job. So basically, again, the combination of the three is what's really going to make the difference as to how well your gears will shift. So the nicer the three are, the better they're going to shift. With this one here, we've got 2 cogs on the front, 10 cogs on the rear. Basically, the 2 cogs on the front allows for a lighter weight bike because you don't have as many cogs as opposed to having your 3, which you have on a standard hybrid or even some of your more entry-level mountain bikes. So when it comes to mountain biking, it's all about being lightweight and being very easy and efficient to ride. When you do mountain biking, you find you don't need any more range than the 20 you've got, and it's plenty enough to get you up and down all those hills that you go on. So with this one here, again, we've got our hydraulic disc brakes. Now we're looking at Shimano hydraulic disc brakes, which are really nice, really easy to use, apply beautifully. These ones here have a bit of a safety mechanism on them, being that you can actually push them in the other direction, which just stops you from, if you come off or anything like that, which I'm really good at doing, they basically just stops it from snapping so that you don't get those broken levers. Now with this one here, obviously being Shimano, they're really good, apply really well. It's just a base level Shimano, but they work really well, a lot better quality than your Tektro. Just quickly over hydraulic brakes. So your hydraulic brakes are just a pressure filled tube. So it just basically clamps down over this disc down here, which just allows for a really nice application of pressure, and they stop you really efficiently. Now on this specific bike, we're running Schwalbe tyres. So your Schwalbe tyres are a really good quality tyre, nice and thick. They're really good for not getting many punctures. Obviously being out on the tracks, it's really easy to get punctures. So they're nice and thick and really solid, and they give you a really good grip on the ground. So they make it so you don't slip and slide too much. So the good thing about mountain biking is when you're doing your cross-country stuff, what you really want to do is you don't want too much pressure in your tyres, right? Having too much pressure in your tyres just has you slipping and sliding around. So if you have a lower pressure in your tyres, it really just gives you that little bit more traction and you don't slide over the ground so much, you kind of go with it. So it really just helps with that traction point. Now with these ones here, again, we have the rebound. So this one here, which basically just adjusts how quickly that suspension springs back. So if you hit like a rock garden where it's like constantly up and down, you want that rebound to be pretty fast so that you get on top of that and it comes back again, so you're not getting right down to the bottom of your suspension. But if you're doing something else and there's a little bit more spread out and you want to come back a little bit slower to be a little bit nicer, then you just adjust that one there. With this one here, we've also running the through axle. So the axle goes basically from one side right through to the other, being through. Alright, so you got your through axle, basically gives you more support and a stronger axle with which to base it on, which is really good for your mountain biking because it just makes it that little bit better, a little bit more sturdy. Anything that's going to make the bike stronger is really what you want because you're hitting some hard stuff and you're hitting it hard. Now with the suspension, with your Fox shocks, we have what we call CTD, which is your 3 settings: climb, trail, descent. So obviously if you're climbing, it's a lot stiffer and you don't get that give, so you're not losing power in that. Now this goes for both the front and the rear, as well as having the rear rebound, which is this red stuff. So the red is always the rebound and the blue is your lockout. So with these ones here, CTD, so obviously you're climbing something, you don't want to have too much give, you want to be quite solid on the ground and get the most power as opposed to your power going into the suspension. You just use your climb setting, and then obviously going trail gives you that really good in between, and it's really good for most of the stuff you'll do. If you then get into any more serious downhill stuff, you just flip it over to descent, and that gives you that option as well. So you've got both CTD on the front and the rear. Now these ones here are your air shocks. So with that, basically you can put the pressure in here suitable to your weight. Now when you get the bike from us, we will actually do that all for you. So we have that all set up, ready to go for you. Now basically the advantage of that is it'll actually work really well. So you could have this suspension work the same for a 50 kilo person as you would a 90 kilo person, because it's set up for your weight so that you get that right amount of pressure to actually get the right amount of give, so you're not bottoming out your suspension or it's not rock solid either. So it just makes it really nice, really easy to use. So this here, this is our Maestro system. This is basically the system employed by Giant. This is their system of working your rear suspension. They work really well, give you a really nice give, and just basically the idea of having the full setup stops it from you losing power or getting movement when you don't want to use it. So it's not like before. What would happen is when you just standardly pedal, you would lose power and you'd actually get that movement in there, whereas the whole Maestro system works to take away from the pedaling affecting the suspension. So the suspension is just affected by you on the seat and going over those rocks. We have a derailleur lockout system, right? So basically what that does is you go from the derailleur being unlocked, so you get that movement in the derailleur, right? Now when you're doing your rock gardens and going over some bumpy stuff, you don't want that, right? Because what that's going to do, it's going to loosen your chain and your chain can come off. So what you want to do is you then flip this to on. So flipping that over stops that movement, makes it more firm, so that you're then not having too many issues with your chain coming off. So it just really helps it to stay there, and so you don't lose anything, and then you don't have to keep stopping and putting it back on. Now if you then need to take the wheel off or something like that, or get the chain back on, you just got to open it up again, and then that'll give you that give so that you can actually get that on and off. So this is just a standard alloy frame. Now with this one here, you've got internal cable routing. So basically what that does is cosmetically, it makes it look a lot nicer. So you obviously don't have as many cables running around, but it also keeps the cables away from anything you're going to run into, right? So you come off your bike, you go over a jump, you run into a tree, you hit the rocks, that kind of thing. You're not going to have the cables on the outer side getting caught on any of that, so you don't have any issues with that. Now with the frame itself, in terms of the geometry, it's a women's specific geometry, which basically means we've got a slightly shorter top tube and narrower handlebars, right? So the shorter top tube is designed for women's shorter torso and longer legs, so that it just really works with our geometry, so we're nice and comfortable on the frame. Obviously the handlebars are designed to be a little bit narrower so that they're not so wide, because we generally don't tend to have as broad shoulders as men do. So it just makes it, again, a little bit more comfortable. The seat as well is also slightly shorter, as well as a little bit wider at the rear. So that basically allows for the fact that it's just going to make it a little bit more comfortable for what we need. So with these ones here, we're running our 27.5-inch tyre, which is a really good in-between. So it basically combines the advantages of the 29er and the 26. So they're really nimble, fast, got really good acceleration, really nice rollover, which rollover is basically that contact area with the ground. So with the 29er, there's less angle, so they kind of roll over a little bit more, whereas with the 26, there's more of an angle, so it kind of runs in and then goes over. So with these ones here, it's kind of an in-between, but it's a really good combination of your 26 and your 29. Obviously you don't get the extremes of either, but it works really well as an in-between size, and they ride really nicely on the tracks and trails. So that basically sums up your Giant Lust 2. So if you want to come in for a test ride, come in and see us and we'll set you up.